Hello, you are on the Ruslan Belov channel. Today, we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of April 3rd, 2025. A huge number of events have taken place today. Before we begin, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support and grow the channel. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Now let's move on to Ukraine, where a large amount of news is coming in. We'll start with the southern direction. Over the past 24 hours, the Russian Federation has launched strikes on Kryvyi Rih using Iskander missiles. According to published information, the strikes targeted temporary deployment points of the Ukrainian armed forces. In these footage, we can see columns of smoke. Reports indicate that the strikes hit Ukrainian military positions. Here, we see high-voltage power lines with smoke nearby, suggesting that the attack may have hit an energy infrastructure facility. However, this might be due to the camera angle of the footage. Next, we move towards the Zaporizhzhia direction, near the settlement of Kamensk. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that during combat operations, the Russian armed forces have taken full control of the settlement Lobkova. This village is located southwest of Stepov and southeast of Kamensk. I remind you that just yesterday, footage of objective control from this section of the front was published. The video was geolocated, showing 3 Russian soldiers capturing Ukrainian troops who were either hiding or taking cover in a basement in the central part of the village. This is where the incident took place. Already yesterday, most of the village was marked as controlled by Russian forces. And today, we received official reports from the Ministry of Defense and various cartographers. Based on all this information, we finalized the territorial control map. As we can see, the Russian army continues to advance toward Kamensk. Regarding pro-Ukrainian sources, they do not confirm this information. Instead, they report only on the clearing operations and securing of positions in the outskirts of Piatikatki, which is far from the frontline positions of the Russian armed forces. Now we move to the Orikhiv section of the front. Today, the map has been adjusted in the southeastern part, possibly for the first time in the last 6 months. In this footage, we can see FPV drone strikes on Russian assault troops advancing near the H08 highway towards both Mala Tokmachka and Orikhiv. The disputed territory here has been marked and re-evaluated multiple times by cartographers, possibly even a year ago. Today we received geolocation data and objective control footage, confirming gradual advances toward Novodanilivka, Mala Tokmachka and Orikhiv itself. Overall, the dynamics show that combat is moving closer and closer to the district center, Orikhiv. Most likely, major battles will take place here either at the end of spring or the beginning of summer 2025. Next, we move to the southern Donetsk direction, specifically to the Bohatyr and Novopavlivka sections of the front, from where we are receiving a lot of important information. First, today, the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the information that began spreading yesterday evening, April 2nd, that the Russian armed forces have taken full control of the settlement Vesele. Additionally, in the past 24 hours, objective control footage has been published, showing combat operations for Vesele. In this footage, we can see artillery preparations, as Russian forces carry out massive strikes on Ukrainian positions in this area. Following the bombardment, Russian infantry and heavy equipment moved in, clearing the settlement. However, in this particular video, we do not see direct footage of Russian soldiers inside the village, only massive fire damage. Despite this, the Ministry of Defense and multiple reliable sources have confirmed full control over the village. Regarding geolocation data, the closest confirmed geolocation near this section of the front is south-southeast of Vesele. Here, we can see strikes on Russian positions near a bridge, meaning combat is still ongoing in this part of the settlement. Nevertheless, the frontline map has been updated, and we see that combat operations are now shifting toward the next settlement, Fedorivka. This is the last village before Komar, which is a key strategic target for Russian forces on this front. The main objective for Russian troops is to reach and cut off major supply routes and bridges near Komar, completely disrupting Ukrainian logistics between Bohatyr and Alexiivka. Now let's talk about this section of the front in general. Over the past few days, we have received a large amount of information from this area. Following regrouping and reinforcement, Russian forces have launched a major offensive towards both Alexeyevka and Bohatyr. There is a significant amount of geolocation data, and frontline adjustments have been made accordingly. After the settlement of Rozliv came under the control of Russian forces, I remind you, this happened on April 1st, 2025. We all remember the footage. In these videos, we can see Russian soldiers raising Russian flags in different parts of the settlement. Based on this footage, as well as on the Russian Ministry of Defense's report, the map was significantly updated in Russia's favor as early as April 1st. On April 2nd, reports emerged of a Russian breakthrough west of Constantinople, effectively bringing Bohatyr into direct striking range. And today, we are already receiving information about another breakthrough by Russian forces. This time, the attack came from Andriivka toward Alexeyevka. It is difficult to say whether this attack was successful, but footage published by the Ukrainian side shows dozens of armored vehicles advancing. There were at least 10 more vehicles ahead, all moving toward Alexeyevka from the east. In this footage, we also see dozens of infantry soldiers dismounting from vehicles and rapidly taking defensive positions in this sector of the front. This deployment happened precisely at this location, where Russian soldiers established their positions. It is unclear whether the infantry advanced further, pushing toward farms on Alexeyevka's eastern outskirts. However, the question is not whether they advanced, but rather when. Will they reach their objective today, tomorrow, or the day after? What is clear is that combat has resumed in this area. The assault on Bohatyr and Alexeyevka has begun, while Russian forces continue advancing toward Komar, aiming to cut off a key Ukrainian supply route. This means that the battle phase is now entering a decisive stage. Northern sector, Novopavlivka front. Further north, in the Novopavlivka sector, combat operations continue, but the intensity has slightly decreased. It seems that Ukrainian forces have regrouped and reinforced their positions, causing the Russian offensive to slow down. There are reports of minor Russian advances in the settlement of Bodanivka, a small village with perhaps a dozen buildings. At least 50% of the village is now under Russian control. Footage also shows drone strikes on Ukrainian positions, including FPV drone operator sites in the area. However, there have been no confirmed breakthroughs or frontline adjustments. For now, the situation here remains stable. It is possible that Russian forces are focusing on clearing operations in Preobrazhenka and Bodanivka, which were captured during the offensive from March 27th to March 31st. Pokrovsk front next. We move to the Pokrovsk front, which is strategically critical for the Ukrainian armed forces. This sector is vital because Ukraine, at great cost in manpower and resources, is attempting to eliminate a Russian salient located between the villages of Udachna, Kotlina, Novovoselievka, Volkovoye, and Peshanoe. Today we received new updates from this front. Neutral cartographers report that Ukrainian forces have continued attacks towards Solonoye. According to neutral experts, the Russian armed forces, seeking to preserve personnel, retreated eastward to new defensive lines in forested areas and the settlement of Volkovoye. It is unclear whether Solonoye has been fully cleared by Ukrainian forces or if its central and eastern parts remain contested. However, the trend is clear. Ukraine continues its offensive in an effort to collapse the Russian salient and restore supply lines to its forces in Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka. Konstantinovka front. The Russian offensive continues moving to the Konstantinovka front, where the Russian armed forces, just like in Bohatyr and Novopavlivka, continue their offensive operations. Over the past 24 hours, we have received the most geolocated footage from this area. Let's start with Novopoltavka. Today, highly significant footage was published, showing an extremely effective mine-clearing operation. The Russian Federation launched an airstrike on Ukrainian forward positions, apparently hitting a mine barrier. The result? A massive explosion wiped out an entire minefield. At least, this is how it appears in the video, and the author of the footage confirms this assessment. In effect, the entire first line of Ukrainian mine defenses in front of Novopoltavka has been eliminated. This means that, possibly within the next 24 hours, Russian forces will attempt an assault before Ukraine has time to rebuild its defenses. There are also reports that Ukraine has deployed the 157th Brigade to hold the line, but they arrived only recently. At the same time, fierce battles continue for the village of Tarasivka. Now, it seems that Russian forces may also begin storming Novopoltavka. Meanwhile, Ukrainian sources are publishing increasingly worried reports. There is growing panic among Ukrainian analysts, fearing that if the Russian offensive breaks through here, the consequences could be unpredictable. Russian forces intensify strikes in the pocket. Simultaneously, Russian artillery and airstrikes in the central sector of this battlefield have intensified. Judging by the large number of geolocations received in the last 24 hours, it seems likely that Russia is preparing for a major assault. This time, the Ukrainian defenses may not hold. Over the past several weeks, Ukrainian forces have already lost key defensive positions in Oleksandropol, Rozovka, and Panteleimonivka. Now, as Russian forces escalate their offensive, the next 24 to 48 hours will likely be critical. And today, according to various cartographers, including pro-Russian and neutral sources, the Russian Federation has managed to capture a company stronghold located west of Oleksandropol. In effect, the first line of defense in the pocket of the Zaryansky agglomeration has fallen, and now the Russian army is in a position to rapidly advance along the N20 highway towards Romanivka and further towards the Kleban Beek Reservoir. We can see that the situation here is deteriorating, and a very high intensity of combat operations is expected in the coming days. Additionally, reports indicate that under pressure from the Russian armed forces, the Ukrainian armed forces have completely withdrawn from Toretsk. Today, this information was confirmed by both neutral and pro-Russian military experts and cartographers. While Ukrainian sources deny this information, we can already see a very high probability that the Zabalka district has been completely abandoned by Ukrainian units due to the looming threat of encirclement. Over the past few days, the Russian army has concentrated heavily on the northern and northwestern parts of Toretsk, with footage emerging from positions behind the Zabalka district. The risk of encirclement was extremely high, which may have been the main reason why Ukrainian units decided to retreat towards the settlement of Shevchenko during the night of April 2nd to 3rd. Currently, the Russian side is carrying out massive artillery strikes on this area. Moving on to the Chasiv Yar direction. Over the past few weeks, the Ukrainian armed forces conducted a series of counterattacks against Russian positions, using a new tactical marking system. We have discussed this extensively. All of those attacks appear to have been repelled by the Russian side. The Russian Federation has not lost its positions on the Ukrainian side of the Siversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. Today, new footage and analyses from various pro-Russian and neutral experts suggest that Russian forces have resumed offensive attempts westward, aiming for the final clearance of Chasiv Yar. It seems that the Ukrainian side has failed to unblock its units trapped in the citadel of Chasiv Yar, and soon this pocket may be completely eliminated. Next, we move to the Lyman sector, where we adjust the map in favor of the Russian Federation daily. Today, the map has undergone further modifications. The trend here is quite strong. Each day, possibly dozens of square kilometers are marked in favor of the Russian Federation. Looking at the situation from March 31st to April 1st, a large amount of territory in the fields between Nova, Katerinivka, and Novolubivka was marked in Russia's favor. On April 2nd, we made additional adjustments slightly northward, marking several strongholds for the Russian side. Today, by the end of April 3rd, another update was made in the Novolubivka area based on objective control footage. This video shows FPV drone strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces on forward Russian positions. Based on this footage, the map was updated. We can see that the Russian side is maintaining its direction of movement towards the settlement of Borova. This village lies slightly north, and the distance from the Russian army's current front line to Borova along this trajectory is at least 30 kilometers. However, this distance is gradually decreasing day by day. Now we move towards the Sumy and Belgorod sectors, where we continue to receive a large amount of objective control footage. In the area of the settlement of Huevo, the Russian armed forces launched an Iskander strike. According to the video's author, reconnaissance operations identified the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces' 129th Territorial Defense Brigade, which were immediately targeted by Iskander missile strikes. Sources report that the Ukrainian forces suffered enormous losses. However, the video also confirms that the Ukrainian side is still holding the defense of Huevo. We can see that fierce battles continue here, with Ukrainian forces putting up strong resistance. From the Belgorod direction, we continue to receive objective control footage from the settlement of Demidivka. Despite statements from certain experts and sources claiming that Demidivka is fully cleared and under Russian control, we still receive footage confirming the presence of Ukrainian soldiers in this village. However, their numbers are decreasing daily as the settlement is gradually reduced to ruins. Today, additional objective control footage was published from the point of Russia's border breach, which serves as the launching ground for many offensive operations. We can see that over the past month, another cemetery of Western military equipment has formed here. Dozens of pieces of equipment were destroyed during attempts to break through. Additionally, reports suggest that the Ukrainian armed forces have begun constructing defensive positions on Russian territory around the village of Demidivka. This indicates that for now, further offensive plans have been put on hold, and the Ukrainian side has decided to dig in and hold these positions. And that's all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and take care.